Mr. Chomsky, you began the briefing mentioning your opinion about the administration's view of what's going on in Iran. What about your view of Iran's aspirations, the government there, the regime? If they end up with a nuclear weapon, how do you feel about that? And also, if you could please comment on the threats that Iran has made toward Israel and other boisterous remarks that have come out of Mr. Ahmadinejad's.
Well, no sane person wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. And there are, but I'll just quote one of Israel's leading military historians, Martin von Crefeld, about a year ago, wrote that, of course, he doesn't want Iran to get nuclear weapons, but he said, after the invasion of Iraq, if Iran is not developing nuclear weapons, they're crazy. The reason is because the invasion of Iraq essentially was an instruction to any potential target in the world that the U.S. is going to attack anyone it likes as long as they're defenseless. So it was an instruction to develop a deterrent. That was pointed out by foreign policy specialists, by academic experts, by intelligence agencies, and so on, who predicted that the invasion of Iraq would lead to an escalation of the threat of terror and proliferation for obvious reasons, which is exactly what happened. How to proceed? Well, there are good ways to proceed. For example, we could take seriously a proposal of Mohammed al-Baradei, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. A couple of years ago, he made a very sensible proposal, which extends well beyond the Iran case. He proposed that all production of weapons-grade material, enriched uranium that could be used for weapons, should be placed under international supervision. Well, if something like that isn't done, the species is going to blow itself up. Free production of weapons-grade material is going to lead to even accidental destruction. So that's a very sensible proposal. Well, to my knowledge, tell me if you can think of someone else, there's only one country that's accepted that proposal, namely Iran. They said if such a proposal is implemented, fine, they'll be willing to get fissile materials from the international agency to use for nuclear energy. So that's one step that could be taken. A further step that could be taken is to pursue the agreement that was made between the European Union and Iran 2 years ago. There was an agreement reached. Iran agreed to temporarily suspend all uranium enrichment while agreeing that it's legal. It's their legal right. Everyone agrees to that. So they said they would suspend it if the European Union would provide firm commitments on security issues. Now, security issues is a term that everyone understands. It means the very credible U.S.-Israeli threats to attack Iran, which incidentally are gross violations of the UN Charter, even the threats. So they said, yeah, they would suspend if the European Union would provide firm assurances on security issues. Well, they lived up to their part of the bargain, Iran, but the European Union didn't. Apparently under U.S. pressure, they didn't take any steps towards providing assurances. Well, that continues. No, well, that's something else. Actually, those are mistranslated statements. I mean, they're terrible statements, but what you heard about, Israel must disappear from the world and so on, is just a quotation from Khomeini years ago, saying that in the course of time, Israel should be eliminated.
Actually, we've heard at different conferences and different moments in which President Ahmadinejad has indeed said these things, so I'm a little confused about that.
Well, you don't have to be confused about them because you can read them.
Sir,
you can read,
please answer,
but it doesn't make any difference.
I asked you a couple of questions which you still have not responded to. One is if the Iranian regime ends up with a nuclear weapon, what does that mean in terms of geopolitics, and also what you, sir, think about the threats that have been made to another member state of the United Nations? Well, you still haven't answered that question, sir.
I'll continue to answer it as I have been doing. If you don't want me to go through it, I won't go through it. But there are very sensible steps that can be taken to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, if the U.S. were interested in that. They know the steps that can be taken. They can follow the proposal of Iran in May 2003 to discuss all issues with the United States, including recognition of Israel, acceptance of the Arab League two-state proposal, anything connected with nuclear weapons, security issues in the region. Well, that's a sensible step. The U.S. refused. That was repeated again last January 30th, not the whole package, but a proposal to suspend uranium enrichment if the European Union would provide assurances on security issues. Now, you're right that threats against anyone, including a member of the United Nations, are serious. But by far the most serious threats, because they're also credible, are the threats by the United States and Israel to attack Iran. Those are extremely serious threats. They've been going on for years. The U.S. continues to state, Condoleezza Rice recently, that there will be no security assurances, period. That means the threat of attack remains on the table. That's extremely serious, much more serious than quoting something that Khomeini said will happen in the future course of time, because it's a credible threat. And in fact, the U.S. is building up the threat. The U.S. now has forces on all of Iran's borders. It's of course, by far the overwhelming military power in the world. Its Israeli client has air and armored forces that are larger and technologically more advanced than any NATO power outside the U.S. And the last year or two, the Bush administration has been building them up further by providing them with roughly 100 advanced jet bombers, very openly and publicly advertised as capable of bombing Iran and returning, equipped with what are called special weapons. You can make your own guess as to what that means. That's for the years of Iranian intelligence to make the worst case. So yes, these are extremely credible threats, and they should be ended by security assurances and by further steps, which I can outline if you like, to integrate Iran into the international community and to put a cap on production of fissile materials. Those are steps towards ending the crisis. Suppose Iran does get a nuclear weapon, which the U.S. is driving them to do. As von Crefeld said, they're virtually instructing them to do it. Well, you know, it's a danger. That means that Iran has a deterrent to U.S. attack. And there's no, it's almost inconceivable that Iran would use a nuclear weapon. If they did, they'd be vaporized in 30 seconds if they even prepared to do it. There is a remote threat that they might leak nuclear technology or weapons to others, maybe even at the scale of U.S. ally Pakistan, though that's unlikely. So yes, it's nobody wants Iran or anyone else to develop nuclear weapons, and sure, nobody wants threats against members of the United Nations or anyone else, particularly very serious and very credible threats like those that the U.S. and Israel are making against Iran. That's much more significant than, in the end of days, some country will disappear.